It's great to see everybody. Thanks so much for being here. So my name is Cowgill. I'm an economist at Columbia. This talk is not about a finished result, but where I think the research frontier for prediction markets actually lies. And let me just kind of dive in and start talking about this. So usually, I think prediction markets are judged by one question, which is, do they forecast well? And as I think lots of people here know, after many years and after many studies, it seems like the answer is yes, yes, they do. So the question is, what goes after this? And as I previewed, so this is a research agenda type of talk. I'm going to be talking about why these questions matter. What are the characteristics of successful projects? I will share some early projects, ideas and results that I have. And then kind of my larger goal is to find dialogue, collaborators, and feedback. So, share what you think and talk to me afterwards, if so. So here's a little bit about me. I'm an economist. My PhD is actually from UC Berkeley here. I'm currently at Columbia, and I'm headed to University of Toronto this fall. In my prior life, I was at Google. I was an engineer on the economics team there. I worked on all sorts of things across the company. On the Hal Varian's econ team there. But one of the most interesting projects that leads me to where I am today is what was then the largest internal prediction market. It was called Profit. You can read about this in this great article by Dan Schwartz in Asterisk magazine in the last year or so. And we also wrote this paper about prediction markets inside of companies using our experiment at Google and data from other companies as well. So a lot of where I think the research frontier now lies is somewhat informed by my experience working on prediction markets, in decision-making context. So I want to, spend my time in this talk on two broad sets of questions that I think are interesting and important next steps for this literature. And the first one I call the real effects of prediction markets. So let me dive in on this. So what do I mean by the real effects of prediction markets? The underlying research question is, how does the presence or absence of a prediction market on a particular topic, how does this change on the ground outcomes? And so this is not about what the market predicts, but what changes because of it existing. And as motivation for this, I think, for lots of the people at this conference and in this community, the presumption is kind of like a chain. We get better forecasts, and then this leads to better outcomes. And we've now kind of validated this first part of the chain, but then the last link is still somewhat unproven. And when we think about research methodology for this last link, we're talking about a causal inference. So the underlying question is, does the presence of the market or having prediction markets, does this cause, some sort of improvement in outcomes? And like lots of causal inference strategies, what we need to answer this is random variation in whether or not a prediction market exists and what's the topic of the market in a given domain. Okay. So what do I mean by random variation? Let me tell you just a quick example of what a successful project I think could look like on this topic. So in our experience at Google, we had in our paper we had 270 company-wide OKRs. That's a Google term. Other people call it KPIs, basically company-level goals over 2 years. And we ended up running a market about all of them and measuring the predictive accuracy of all of them. But we made the rookie mistake, which is that we forgot to leave off a control group. So we opened markets about all 270. We thought, we have this wonderful thing. It's a prediction market. It helps forecast the future. And in fact, it was more accurate than other ways of forecasting that Google had internally. Now, here's what I think we should have done. We should have taken the 270 OKRs, randomly split them between half of them, which would have a prediction market attached, and then the other randomly selected control group would have no market. And with this experimental design, we could have answered the question, do prediction markets raise goal completion? Okay. So this is a question that basically has not been touched at all in the literature. I think if you're going to try to make a business case for a company adopting, having a strong case that prediction market raises goal completion would be the sort of thing that I think would be, convincing to someone who didn't care about prediction markets per se, but wanted to use them, as a means to accomplish some bigger goal. And I think it's more powerful than a case study because, quotes can get made up. The exact context is not clear. We could pre-specify this experimental design and have hopefully convincing and causally interpretable results. Now, beyond goal completion, you could also ask, do the prediction markets raise effort? Do they raise awareness of progress and of the goal? Do they change information flow, or do they change how workers feel, even subjectively? Almost any outcome could go down here at the end of this experimental design, and I think it would be a contribution because essentially no one has touched this question at all. I personally would even go even farther to say even null results would be interesting because that would at least say, that the prediction markets at least sometimes don't change anything, at least for the variables that we're looking at. Now, I think that this type of internal company goal setting is probably maybe the best way to go after this particular research question, but it's not the only one. And here are a couple of characteristics of good projects for studying the real effects of prediction markets. So you actually, I think, don't need to have markets that are about goals or about success. Measuring other outcomes, I think, can possibly be important as well. The market actually also doesn't need to be accurate or correct. It could be that the predictions are completely wrong, but the existence of the prediction market kind of draws attention to a particular goal. It makes people feel like they're being watched and that, what they're doing matters and that people will bet on it. And that could actually change or improve outcomes, even if the information in the market isn't all that predictive. So you don't need these two things. You do need random variation in what markets exist. This is what we'll be kind of trying to identify off of. And then finally, you do need an interesting outcome variable, okay? So let me give you another example of how one could study this outside of a company context and without success or failure being the goals. So here is a screenshot from Cowgill. Cowgill actually now has key performance indicators as one of the topics of their prediction markets. And you have things like, how many United Airlines passengers will they have in Q2? Presumably United wants that to be, higher as opposed to low. They also have product launches, which is something that lots of companies have run prediction markets and the timing of these product launches. So a similar real effects of prediction markets project could measure the impact of Cowgill having these KPI markets. Now, you can also see in the Cowgill example some of the challenges of doing this sort of study. So just from this screenshot in the Cowgill data, you can tell what KPIs they actually opened a market about. But what's less clear is what are the KPI markets that could have been run, but counterfactually, but were not run. And even if you knew those, you would want to know why is it that some KPI markets were picked to have a market, but others were not. Now, I think the best way to do this would be to have a list of possible KPI markets in advance, and then randomly select which ones actually go on to, your internal market. But there might be other ways of doing this as well. And so we're talking with Cowgill about running this sort of thing. Of course, you never know if those type of partnerships work out, but this could be something that one way of pursuing this agenda. Another interesting thing about this Cowgill example, now, one question, if you had the randomization in the presence of the prediction market, you could say, does having the prediction market improve performance? But that's not the only interesting outcome. Another interesting would be, if you have a market on United Airlines passengers, how does this affect liquidity or trading in the main market? And I would count that as another type of the real effective prediction market. So the market, we're getting data not only about the accuracy, but how things change, because of this, okay? So talk to me, please, if you would like to work on this, if you have kind of thoughtful feedback or criticism, or I guess particularly if you have a setting where we could run this type of experiment, because it seems important to kind of close the loop and show the impact of prediction markets. Now, so the real effects of prediction markets is the first kind of frontier research question. The second one is related to decision-making impact. So where do we see, I think, the biggest potential for decision-making impact? It's probably inside of firms. Probably in cases where, say, workers have lots of dispersed information about what the company should do. And decision makers could actually make an on-the-ground difference if they could tap into this. So we're not currently seeing a lot of organizational adoption, and let's talk about why and what could change this. Okay. Now, of course, everybody knows prediction markets are flourishing in Polymarket and Cowgill. The organizational markets are not. So there aren't as many companies that are kind of adopting prediction markets internally as we once see. And even on the intensive margin, these numbers are from Google, but only 10% of employees even created an account, and 1% kind of created actually completed a trade. And when we look across companies, it's very common, partly because of these low level of participation, that the decision makers actually don't pay that much attention to them, partly because these are thinly traded markets. And then the markets get canceled after a trial, actually, even if they were very predictive. Right? So there are possibly lots of reasons for this. The reason I'm going to focus on comes back to the underlying design of the market. So I want to talk about how to design more organizationally robust markets. So let me unpack this for a second. If you look at the underlying mathematical models of prediction markets, they feature traders in these markets that only get utility from the money that they win or lose in betting. And what these models implicitly assume is that traders are indifferent to what a third party will do with the information revealed through the trading. Okay. Now, in an organization, this is probably not going to be true in lots of places. People, of course, do care what you do with information that they reveal through their trading. And just as an example, suppose there's a market about whether your project is behind schedule. So lots of companies have launch timing markets. So, if you have private information that you're running behind, you could possibly trade in that. But if they're going to then close down your project because of that, you may be less inclined to do this. Or you might actually be inclined to lie in your markets and try to trade unprofitably, hoping to make those profits up when they, by influencing the decision. So this problem means that in organizational settings, classic markets are not incentive compatible. So people have incentives to lie in order to shape the decision. And I think that the Homo economicus sort of rational agents would probably actually lie. Now, actual human beings might sometimes just feel a bit creepy, kind of lying in the market and trying to manipulate it. And I think this is a reason we, probably see low participation. And of course, then knowing this, it would make sense for managers to stop adopting or stop paying attention, given that the markets are kind of thin and being easily manipulated. Okay. So this is, I think, one of the big problems with organizational prediction markets and other markets where we want to use them for decision making. So the people with the best information have some sort of conflict, and that's going to shape how incentive compatible the markets are, unless you redesign them. Okay. Now, so what can we do? This is a novel market design problem. So I'll be talking at a high level about a microeconomic redesign of prediction markets and show you some possible examples. And we have a technical paper for people who want to kind of review the math and algebra for how this would actually work. But just to preview what's going on, so the market should not ignore the preferences of the traders or their preferences about what you do with the information that they're submitting. Hopefully that's clear, but here are two reasons that you can't ignore them. The first is if you ignore preferences in decision-making, this can lead to essentially retention problems, effort problems, workers saying, oh, you keep using my information, in ways that I don't like. I'm going to go somewhere else. I don't like these decisions. Then you'll either have to pay them more or you'll have a kind of a smaller staff. And then the second one is you have these incentives to misreport. Okay, so, should you be reporting what you want to happen or what you think will likely to happen? This conflict of information screws up the truth-telling aspect of the prediction market. So what would this redesign look like? I'm just going to give a high-level sketch right now, and I'm happy to answer questions afterwards. Let me set up the problem first. So suppose we have a decision maker that's facing a binary decision. So think of something like, fund a new project or not. And the idea, I think it's implicit in any decision market setup, is the project has some value, let's call it V, in an unknown future state of the world, and is otherwise useless or has even negative utility. Okay, so the anticipation of these future payoffs from a good decision makes it worthwhile today to spend some money to gather better information, okay, from employees who might know, or for other kind of interested parties who may have good information about the future state, okay? So this is our decision-making setup. And now let's talk about the traders in the market. So in a usual market, every worker has a signal or a private prediction based on some information that they privately have about what's going to happen in the future that's somehow payoff relevant to the decision maker's choice, whether this is a good project or not, whether it's a good action to take for the company as a whole. But then they also have a preference, and these preferences are things that you don't typically see in the prediction market models. So some people might want the action to go ahead, actually, even if it's bad for the company. I think this happens all the time, Maybe they want to be able to write about some new project they were a part of on their resume, even if it's not ultimately successful. Alternatively, some people might oppose a new project or some sort of action, even if it's good for the whole company, if they don't think they're going to be able to share in the benefit of this, or it's going to make them work harder without any benefit or something like this. Okay, so this is kind of generally set up. And then we're going to create a new kind of prediction market-like mechanism where the workers submit both of these things rather than just one, okay? And here's some intuition behind why this works. So first, the organization is going to need to pre-commit to a decision, whether to take the action or not, on the basis of the reports of these two variables, the prediction and the preference, okay? And the pre-commitment has two advantages. First, the agents can figure out how their reports will map onto the decision, okay? Or what exactly they're influencing. This is not a part of the typical prediction market design, okay? The other benefit is the commitment guarantees that the company will actually act on the information that's being submitted. And this is, I think, an issue with regards to the first part of the talk regarding impact, okay? The second, I think, keys to a better design is to make payments to and from traders also on a pre-committed basis. Now, in classic prediction markets, traders are being paid, of course, and these payments are used to discipline predictions to make sure people are more accurate. Okay, here that's still going on. The payments are used to discipline the predictions. But it's also used to address the underlying preferences. And the intuition for this is that if the decision that's ultimately being made goes against a particular worker's preference, the transfers try to make them whole. And the transfers kind of would, if the decision does go in their way, then they get charged a small amount. Okay. So why does this work? Well, you don't have to worry that your honest prediction will make the decision maker do something you don't like, because they're going to cover you and make you whole if you do it. And if you do really want the decision, the action to be made, even if it's bad for this company, then you can share some of your benefit with the decision maker in order to make them more likely. Okay, so obviously this is not a traditional prediction market, but it's adaptive to the needs of organizations where the people with the best information want you to make the decision a certain way. Okay, and also importantly, it will not always pick the unconstrained best option. So even if the market here says that it's a really good idea for the company, if the workers ultimately hate it, then it won't happen. Yes. They can be arbitrary, yes. Thanks. All right, so what does success look like for this set of projects? Well, the first is, I think, a published technical paper with proofs of the key properties of this mechanism, that it's incentive compatible, both for preferences and the worker's private information or predictions. We have a baseline version of this, so if you're the type that likes to read this sort of paper, we could share it with you. But I think there are also lots of interesting extensions of this underlying model that we could develop. So reach out if this sort of thing interests you. Also, I think success on this looks like an empirical trial that first of all makes some of the key implementation decisions, and then shows through a trial that you end up making better decisions through this method than with classic prediction markets or with no prediction markets. So this empirical setting trial would require some funding and a setting to run it in. If this is the kind of thing that interests you, then reach out. There are lots of ways to implement this, and I think you should start asking questions because I'm kind of winding down now. Here's one way this might look. So if a company is about to make one of these decisions, you could direct the employees or the experts on the expert panel to something that looks like this. So what do you think the probability the action will be? Reach some verifiable success metric, and how much do you want this decision to go through? All right, I've given an example here where the person thinks it's going to be pretty successful, but they don't want it. This is kind of common, alas, in organizations where maybe it would change your job, even if it's going to be successful, you have to travel a bunch or something like this. So you click submit, and basically the web page then says, all right, so pay now $350. These are just example numbers. And given what you reported here, we are whatever likely to take the action. If we do, you'll be immediately paid back this $550. Notice you're immediately being made whole if they do it, despite not liking them. If we don't, you'll be immediately paid $100. And then in addition, if your prediction here, the 60% is correct, you'll get an additional payoff, okay? The company would be able to afford this, and these numbers would be set based partly on how much they actually value the information, which we can calculate with some of the algebra in the paper. All right, so pay the $350 now, or revise if you want to say, well, actually, maybe it's more like $95, you could see kind of what this is. So if you want to know the technical details of how we would actually come up with these numbers, that's the kind of thing that's in the paper. So I won't get into that now. All right, so just to conclude, I think markets forecast really well. The big question is, how does the presence of a market change outcomes on the ground? And how do we design markets like for organizations where people can easily, that are well poised to affect outcomes on the ground, like organizations where the most informed people also have something at stake. Okay, the theme of these two projects is we didn't really want markets just to make better forecasts. We thought that better markets would change the world, and accuracy was just the missing input. Okay, so the next phase, I think, should try to put this impact question back at the center of design and measurement. And with that, thank you so much. And I welcome any questions or to chat afterwards. Thanks so much.